10 years of my life have been spent working as a cook and a chef. I was never very passionate for the job, but it was what I went to school for. I'll spare you all the long sob story there, but suffice it to say, my less than stellar experience with the culinary industry taught me how important it is to properly research a career before jumping in feet first. So, naturally, I decided to go back to college with only a half-formed plan on what I wanted to do with my degree. As I've attended classes and talked to counselors, though, I started to build an idea of what it was I wanted to do. Like most people, I like the idea of being my own boss and setting my own hours. I like to travel, and working behind a computer all day doesn't bother me in the slightest. Most of my classes have been online, so I've had a bit of a taste of what it's like to focus on my work without the attention you get in a face-to-face class. All of this has built up to the idea of working as a professional freelancer. This project was the perfect chance to bring some focus to my future. Though there were a lot of potential options for freelancers, such as editor, transcriptionist, or writer, I focused on 3 potential career paths due to time and other constraints. Translator, web designer/developer, and programmer. Most of my research so far has been looking through various online sources, though I made some use of the library's online databases, especially the ACM Digital Library, ABI Global, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook. The most useful source of information for this project were probably the blogs I looked at, since they tended to give more pertinent anecdotal accounts of what it's like to actually work as a freelancer. One thing that was fairly easy to find were the basic statistics, so on that note, it's time for some boring numbers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, in their biannual Occupational Outlook Handbook, lists the typical pay for translators and interpreters at approximately $46,000 a year. Programmers have a median pay around $80,000, and web developers have a median pay rate of $67,000. Given the nature of freelance work, these numbers can vary hugely from person to person and job to job. So, that in mind, I also looked at the barriers of entry into each field. Translation has the highest barrier of entry, especially given the lower pay range. Obviously, to become a translator, you need to get skilled in your target language, Japanese in my case, and it can take many years to get to the appropriate skill level. All of the sources I looked at heavily hedged their numbers, but it seemed like the consensus that it takes about 6 years of dedicated study to get from zero to ready for entry-level translator jobs. A degree usually isn't required, but certification in the form of language proficiency exams generally are. The experience is the real kicker here. To get hired on by any sort of reputable company, you generally need to have provable skills in both languages. That might mean getting published, or it might mean translating stuff for free. But there's a catch here. Many of the things that a translator might do for free, such as working on fan translations of games, anime, light novels, and so on, skirt dangerously close to violating copyright laws. Works in the public domain have almost certainly been translated already, and most legitimate translation gigs aren't available without experience. All of that means that choosing the right project for a beginner translator is an incredibly important and difficult part of eventually finding paying clients. Web designers and programmers aren't necessarily expected to work for free when starting out like translators are, but getting paid $5 for a week's worth of work isn't much better. In terms of necessary paperwork, web design and development is quite accessible. Few clients are going to worry about whether or not the freelancer they're talking to has a degree. It's the skills required to make it as a designer that weed out the unworthy. Knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are required at bare minimum, and WordPress familiarity is important as well. Webmasters require customer service skills. Front-end developers require artistic skills and familiarity with typography. And back-end developers should be familiar with additional languages, such as Java, Python, or PHP. Each of these are specialized skills, and especially for freelancers, it's important to balance whether it is a better option to specialize or generalize. Far more important than a degree or certification is the freelancer's portfolio, which proves job experience and demonstrates the sort of styles the designer is comfortable with. While the other options I looked at can take a year or two before they start becoming viable careers. A web designer who is lucky, skilled at marketing, and selective of clients could potentially begin making a proper career of their work after only a few clients. There's even the potential for a passive side income through selling Photoshop templates, WordPress themes, wireframes, and other digital offerings, though it seems like most web designers regard those as only being good for supplemental income. As for programmers, more formal knowledge is usually required, just as with translators. Provable skills with one or more programming languages are a must, usually demonstrated with a portfolio of personal projects or a degree, but many companies also require their programmers, even the freelance ones, to be certified in whatever technologies they're working with. It isn't a universal requirement, But a freelancer wanting to take on a big-name corporation as a client may find the client requires the freelancer to be certified with their products first. A willingness for long hours is important too, since a programmer may find themselves working long hours on a project, sometimes up to 12 hours a day or more. But working as a programmer has one major upside: the strong potential for passive income. Unlike with web developers, many of the programmers I read considered living off passive income to be a viable end goal for their careers. There's a lot that all the freelancing jobs I looked at share in common. As per Pippa Considine's 2006 article, The Revenge of the Freelancer, the demand for freelance work is increasing. This is both good and bad, as the number of freelancers is also increasing. Freelancers are expected to work quickly and efficiently, and the need for flexibility in freelancers means that job offers tend to be snatched up very quickly. As a result, it is extremely important for freelancers to build up a base of clients who they can rely on for repeated work or referrals. Some specific advice was frequently repeated across fields as well, besides the need to constantly market oneself and the warning that work will be unappealing in the early stages. I encountered many people highly recommending that freelancers make heavy use of contracts, both to give their work more legitimacy and to protect themselves from unsavory clients. A bit of practical advice regarding costs was also frequently repeated. Freelancers are usually considered to be self-employed individuals by the IRS, which means that tax payments must be made quarterly, and a self-employment tax is required to be paid, which replaces the usual Social Security and Medicare withholdings. In addition, freelancers should keep careful track of business expenses, since they're responsible for all the overhead that an employer would normally take care of. My research yielded plenty more useful information, but unfortunately my time is nearly up, so that will have to wait for another day. All told though, working as a freelancer seems like it has the potential to be a deeply fulfilling experience, and I've come out of this research with an optimistic view of the future.